clerk will read out the names.
It's a wonderful Wednesday, and we're delighted to bring you Parliament and Governors. Good afternoon. I'm Uyi Agmofwegbe in Benin City, Nigeria. This week, we're turning our focus to something that's very, very topical. In fact, some persons believe it is the most topical issue as far as this country is concerned right now, because it is one issue that touches Nigerians across board, regardless of your status, socially, economically, and otherwise. It has to do with water. And then you're wondering, how come we're suddenly talking about water? We're talking about water now because some level of regulation is being introduced at the National Assembly level. There's a National Water Resources Bill which has raised a lot of dust in the last couple of weeks. People have been speaking for and against it, but it will appear the voices against it are becoming louder by the day, from civil society groups to the academia to even the media. For example, you see people who have been establishing opinions against this piece of legislation has been proposed. We understand that it has passed through second reading already. As a matter of fact, it has been referred to a committee of the House of Representatives. Now, the concern that many persons have about this bill is the fact that there's an aspect of it that vests altogether the bodies of water in this country, ownership of the bodies of water in this country, on the federal government, which also means that for you to sink a borehole, whether for private or commercial use, you will have to, by all means, obtain license from federal authorities to be able to do that. But wait a minute, this is a country where, whether for good or bad, Nigerians have become accustomed to being totally responsible for providing themselves water. This is a country where government has not been able to provide potable water for the most part for the generality of its citizens. So the question probably is, what is the essence of this bill? How will it change the conversation for the better as far as making potable water available to a majority of Nigerians in this country? The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, says this bill, quote unquote, will trigger change. What is that change? What is the context within which we should be expecting that change? We'll take a quick break. We're back shortly to start the conversation. Stay with me. My guest today is an academic, and he understands how a number of these things work and is interested in having this discussion here on the program this Wednesday. Felix Osareme, it's so good to have you join us.
Thank you, Uyi, and the audience out there. You're welcome to this discussion segment.
Just so we set the record straight, Felix Osareme is a lecturer at the University of Benin. Let's just get this whole thing on the road. Water is life, as they say. It's essential. Yeah. You can't take that away. How come we're suddenly having this curve as far as making water available in Nigeria is concerned?
It's a bit scary, if I'm permitted to use that term in the public domain, to hear that the federal government is pushing this bill. It's an executive bill to start with, so it's not coming from the legislators per se. It is the government that's
the executive.
Yes, that pushed the bill. And their proposition is that they want to regulate all bodies of water within the territorial integrity of our country, Nigeria. Now, the bill points, as is proposed, points out that those bodies of water that exist within the confines of the territorial integrity of Nigeria will be vested in the federal government of Nigeria. The federal government will now have exclusive rights. Meanwhile, the Land Use Act of 1978 vests lands in the governance of the states. And Nigeria, as we know, is a federation. And the Federation of Nigeria recognizes 3 tiers of organization and administration: the local government, the state government, and the federal government. So if you take it like this, water is so essential that regulating it from top down already will become a very difficult thing, given the history of the maladministration that Nigerians have been subjected to over the years. In terms of provision of water, most parts of this country rely on self-help. Individuals have suddenly discovered that you can sink your own borehole and have your water. Individuals realize that you can buy your own generator and have your own power. Individuals realize that you can put a wall around your house and have your own sense of security. So most individuals in Nigeria have grown to become governments unto themselves. The major thing that the federal government is pushing now is saying that all bodies of water within the country will be under its authorization. That means states do not have control over bodies of water in their jurisdiction. The local governments will not even be able to legislate on it, even though they make bylaws, then the state assembly will make their own laws. But the federal law, and whenever there's any contradiction, any conflict between a federal law and a state law, most times the federal law will supersede.
Right.
So when the federal government is making such a law, putting an executive bill forward, it calls to question what is their objective. And the part I read through, because I got the proposed bill from actually February 2016. That's when the executive developed the bill.
Right.
And the opening preamble mentioned that it's a bill, an act that will meet all the water requirements of the country. Water is a natural resource. It was quite clear, natural resource. It's trying to regulate it. Then they said it to be in consonance with the United Nations Safe and Hygienic Water Provision Plan. So they are tying it to a global plan, being put by the United Nations. Now, in many countries, with all honesty and sincerity, governments regulate the use of water. That is very true. Nigerian government will not be wrong in saying that. Where Nigerian government is finding it, where it is going to be contentious now, is that our government here in this country always passes the buck when it comes to taking responsibility. They will not accept responsibility, but they want to get benefits. So you will push responsibility to the populace, you will take the benefit of what the populace would have suffered to provide, or what they have had to go through in very difficult times, and you just wait at the end to reap the glory. So this is where the problem is. And it is also tied to the rhetoric that is already ongoing about this issue of Ruga. Some persons are saying, because when the bill was first presented to the 8th Assembly, in fact, the Assembly was divided on clearly regional lines and ethnic lines. Most of the representatives and the members from the South stood clearly against those from the North, saying that this is unacceptable because water is so essential that you cannot begin to legislate on it now.
Right.
Over the years, if we had developed good water works system, in the 70s and early 80s, tap water used to run in homes in this country. We keep hearing of budgets made for water supply to homes. We keep hearing of loans being taken from World Bank, from IMF. We keep hearing of support from World Health Organization, from United Nations for potable water processes and supply lines. I still remember the ones that were at Obahi, those large pipes. In fact, the pipes have disappeared now. We don't know where they are at the moment. But we were told then that it was, at least I was growing up then, we were told that it was for water supply. We have water board at Iyaro, in Ohoro, in Ubowo here. They don't function. We have
their water receptacles.
We have at SCG, between second and third circular. You see these giant water towers. In fact, they're used for adverts now, for Coca-Cola, for different fruit juice.
Yeah.
These things were built at great cost for some reason. You hear that they are constructing road, that the pipes have been ruptured. There should have been synergy. Once these pipes are laid, there should be a projection for upgrade, for renewal. Most of these pipes initially were these concrete pipes made with asbestos.
Right.
Over time, if they are degrading, you change them to more comfortable materials, such as plastics that we are using today. Most of the pipes we are using are PVC pipes. They withstand temperature and they are flexible. So we should be looking at those. But major pipes for supplying water to cities and communities are usually these giant size pipes. Sometimes are as high as 10 feet in diameter, some are 6 feet in diameter. So that's massive. And when you lay them, you bury them deep in the ground. They have valves, they have turning points, they have turn keys. These are things that the government should have been telling people how they are achieving them. You are just making a law saying you want to take over control. And within the bill, as the write-up by the Honorable Speaker of the House of Rep, Honorable Femi Bajabiamila, that the government intends to create a National Water Institute, they intend to train people on water supply processes, they intend. Yes, those are good plans. But that is putting the cart before the horse.
I'll tell you what many persons I've spoken to find interesting. They are saying this bill was introduced in 2018 and couldn't find concurrence between the upper legislative chambers and the lower house. Exactly. So if the bill, quote unquote, died at that point, why do you have to
now? That's, I was coming to that. That's why people are worried. And in fact, people are even claiming that it has been smuggled back into the house under this very difficult time where people are talking of how do we survive COVID, how are we surviving partial shutdown, and in some areas total lockdown of the economy. That people are talking about daily survival now. You now bring in something that you expect will not catch their attention. That is the fear. And people are also tied to that issue of RUGA, the rural grazing areas for agricultural development, that it is being tied that any water body that is under the control of the government, so federal government can say, we will site this camp there, or you can do this in this area. And that it's also going to negate the Land Use Act of 1978. They are also saying that it is also in direct contradiction of the fact that Nigeria is a federation. That water flows from, water is not limited. Water, you see, water does not follow the same dimension with land. Land is fixed. Water flows across boundaries, flows into different areas. So if you regulate it here and regulate it there, the use here, by the time you put a hut here, it will likely affect the down. That flexibility that would have been available for people to negotiate at that lower level, that decentralized level, once you centralize it, and we know what big government represents in Nigeria, it will represent this connection from the people at the grassroots, the end users, the ones that will feel the pinch. In Nigeria, we still don't have potable water in homes. We live in Benin City. I live in Benin City. If you go off-road, you now find people that will now sink borrow in their homes and connect access pipes to their wall and say, okay, a day or two in a week, anybody that doesn't have borrow in their house, come and take water free. These are things that are happening because the government has abdicated its primary responsibility, the provision of welfare for the populace. Government should have been the one directing the process. People have not taken the bull by the horns and they fashioned ways to survive. Now the government is coming in to say, don't worry, we will just give you a license to do this, to do that. What have you provided in the first instance? You are telling a child that has grown, oh, don't worry, now that you have grown, I will preside over your wedding. But you never train this child to become responsible enough to decide that he will sit down and get married or how to be a good parent. These are processes. So you don't go to the end of the matter to address it. You start from the beginning. What are the root causes of people now taking these issues to become personal? Because as we do, I've asked this question from a relative in Canada. Once it's summer in parts of Canada, they will regulate the amount of water you can use. You cannot even water your lawn. You cannot wash your car. Because they are very careful to make sure that groundwater is not wasted. Chile had problem with groundwater. Groundwater dried up. Groundwater is not there forever. It's a natural resource, yes, but there's a process, a filtration process. We'll just sink borehole, we'll take water. Yes, but it's not our fault. If you sink an industrial borehole, it can service a whole community better. You channel the pipes, but you don't have that. So everybody is sinking his own.
So at least you would do option than to have your individual borehole.
That's why there's indiscriminate sinking of boreholes everywhere, which the government is feeling that it's a problem. But you didn't address the cause. You are looking at symptoms.
People are saying if we had a public hearing prior to all of these second reading, first reading, second reading of the bill, or better still, if they had been, as we usually say,
Openness.
wild consultation, broad consultation about this whole thing, the conversation probably would have assumed a different path altogether.
Oh, yeah, it would be interesting for you to know that in the 8th Assembly, this bill was stood down. Why is this coming up now? In fact, so the recent argument now, the narrative today, even as of last week, is that this bill has passed through reading before. Can it go through reading a second time? Do you reread a bill? Because a bill follows a channel. First reading, second reading,
by basic legislative standards.
Yes. So it has gone through that. It was dropped. So the process is a straight line. The government is looking at the backdoor approach to smuggle it in. That's why people are saying, why now? We have greater issues that are pressing. And the government is not even coming up with a proposed response to the critical challenge.
We're going to look at some of these responses before we're done with this program. But we're taking a quick break now. We're back shortly so we can wrap it up. Thank you for staying with us as always on the program. We were talking about responses a while ago, but some persons will tell you, look, anyhow it turns out, there's more of politics underneath it than anything else. Some people say the government is only trying to deflect attention from more salient, more pressing, more nagging issues in this country. Is there any iota of truth in that?
Yes, I believe that the government is always playing to the gallery. When the government is confronted with critical issues of its own credibility, its own inability to address more critical issues like insecurity, economic downturn, the government will flip a coin and distracts attention from the critical issue. If the government is addressing issue of security very well, if the government is addressing the issue of food crisis that is impending, because as of last week we are hearing that Nigeria is beginning to borrow grains from outside this country. If the government is actually standing down on ravaging inflation, these are the critical ones for now. Most people that are even seeing their borehole, they don't have power from public sector to even get water. They have to use their own generating sets. Many people are going buy solar panels now. They have gotten what we call solar powered boreholes now. People are now setting the pace for government. Government should be setting the pace for society.
So what that means is government is playing catch up apparently.
Government is able to catch up in a year. Government is just waiting to rip off people. That's the way it is right now. Because a government that is trying to catch up will say, as this bill is supposed to prove, they would have said, okay, we withdrew this bill due to public angst against it, or the quarrel, the angst in the legislative houses, the upper and lower houses, is enough for us to say, okay, let us take it back and look at what we were complaining about. Can we put in new arguments? Is the government deploying, let's say, the government say we have gotten a facility, a grant for $100 billion. We are going to network all cities to public water supply systems. We are going to bring water filtration systems. We are going to revamp existing structures. We've not seen that in the bill per se. I went through the proposed bill. Of course, they mentioned it, but they are not driving that point. They are driving more at licensing, at collecting licensing fees, at creating an institute, are telling us that they want to create a training center for hydrologists. And this is Nigeria that where we know ourselves. This is becoming too idealistic. We should be seeing reality. You see, it's always easy. I once said in a program here that government does not need to publish a white paper when it is working. We know. If I suddenly pass the year, I see that water board is being, you are changing the equipment, you are breaking in new structures, you are putting solar panels. So something is happening in water board. If I see that the drains, you are putting big pipes inside the drains because you don't need to start cracking the roads. And of course, in those days, they used to dig holes across. These days, there is horizontal drill. You don't need to destroy the road. You simply channel a pipe under the road. This is possible. This is not rocket science. It's only in Nigeria in 2020, the government is explaining to us that they want to take over rights to water without putting in place structures to make sure that the water is actually properly designed.
There's a question about those who already have, existing borehole owners, for example. What happens to them if this whole bill goes through and then you have to obtain license?
In a normal, let me put the word normal in quote. In a normal society, it will be that, if those of you that already have borehole, we are going to compensate you. You don't just only tell somebody that spends so much. The least cost of getting a borehole now would have been about 400 to 500,000 by contemporary standard, by today's standard. Somebody spends that money, you don't tell him to come and get a license from you for the money he has spent, providing what you should have ordinarily given to him. If I know that if I turn on my tap, water will flow, just the way if I put on a switch on in my house, light will be on, I will pay. The disconnect happened that these services were no longer coming in at the appropriate time. Then they now made it look so elitist that you have to belong to a class to get these basics. And these are basics: light, water, security. It's not whether you are rich or poor, big or small. Everybody desires it. Water is life. And water is a natural resource, so you don't make it. It's there. You can actually regulate it so that it will go around for everybody. But the government is looking at what can they make from it. The government is already thinking as if it is we versus them. The people, we are against the people. So the government is not carrying people along. If a government is carrying people along, you discuss this thing, take it to the public domain. Civil society groups have written extensively about this thing. In fact, the argument is coming more from civil society that this government has lost its understanding of why it is a government to the people. But if it knows why, it shouldn't be starting from the end point. It should start from the beginning. We have a problem of water supply in this country. We need potable water for every community. How do we solve the problem? You start from the bottom up. You build up consensus. But in Nigeria, as the government is saying that, the government is legislating it. So they're going to ask you to accept it or leave it. And the government also believes that, well, once we pass a law, people are bound to comply. You see, then people will now comply in disobedience.
A few years ago in this country, we saw quite a number of states that attempted at least to introduce, if you like, water tax.
Yeah, even tenement rates.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Yes.
To say if you have a borehole, you pay XYZ at the end of the month. If it's a privately owned borehole,
yes.
this is the rate.
Car wash,
exactly. As long as you source your water from the ground and so on and so forth. All of those efforts essentially failed at the end of the day. In most, I mean, for the most part, a lot of persons are now saying on the basis of that, this is likely going to hit the rocks as well. Do you see that happening?
The government keeps giving some people opportunity to become very corrupt. Let me use that language. You now appoint officers to go and be monitoring people in their homes, how they use their borehole. Are you aware that a lot of people don't even have water in their homes? Those people who sang, I just give you an insight on that. Those people who sang boreholes, they now give some the what we call free water on certain days to their own environment. So they have taken the job of the government to themselves. Some of them, they use their own generator to pump water before they give to the people. And most of the time, it was fashionable at the time to find people buying water. But in most areas, people don't really buy it. They just say, okay, come and take.
You have those who shoot pipes through their fences.
Through their wall. Sometimes you pass the pipe. Sometimes some of them are even generous enough. They will now construct a pipe. You even hold a bowl. You know, you carry a bowl on your head. You stand, they will activate it from inside the house. Then you get water, you go away. In 2020, the government should be feeling the pulse of people. Say, oh, our people have gotten through this trauma. Let us ease their pain. But what we are seeing now is not government looking at it from that angle. Government is looking at it from the top-down perspective that, well, you are taking water from the ground. You have to give us something for that. The business mind that the government is using and politicizing the argument is why people will resist. And if you send people to go and collect those rates, you are simply enriching them because whatever they take once and will not get to the government. Are you even going to be sure that they went there?
And that is going to be a real problem. Now that the bill has been able to scale first and second readings and has been referred to a committee of the House of Representatives, we can only watch to see how it turns out ultimately. But as it stands today, we have loud voices speaking up against this bill. So we're waiting to see how the development pans out. Thank you so much, Felix Osarime, for coming to join us on this program. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
That's a wrap on the program this week. I'm Uyi Agumofwegbe. Enjoy the rest of your day.